Yeah, so what is self-inquiry? It's one of my favourite practices. I watch lots of Muji YouTubes. It's freely available on YouTube. And he's my as most of you know, he's one of my spiritual teachers. I had the White Light spiritual experience with him. So there's a great resonance with his teachings of self-inquiry. Now, one of the things which I haven't shared for a while. So one of the basic things to understand about the structure of the ego, what happens with the ego is that this was from Ramana. This is what Muji paraphrased from Ramana, was what's happening, is that you can have and I'm not saying, I'm just identifying it with an example of my own. So it'd be like, one suddenly has the thought that I want a chocolate biscuit. Mm-hmm. So this thought is kind of is like a resonance within the ego. I want a chocolate biscuit, I want a chocolate biscuit. So it wants to do something in the world, go and achieve something or do something. As soon as I get the chocolate biscuit, what happens is the thought stops vibrating, and there's a feeling of peace and of happiness. Now, the ego then makes up the story that if you eat a biscuit, it gives you peace and happiness. But really, the peace and happiness was the absence of the ego not chatting for a while. That gives a temporary relief. But then it starts to talk again, saying we need something else to do. So actually, nothing in the external world has any power or meaning to give you anything. But it seems like that, so one can be entrapped in the world, because when the ego wants to do something and it gets the outcome, it might give you temporary relief and say that that's the thing you should do to get more relief. And that's how all addiction comes in to play. But also it keeps the endless cycle of the ego wanting to do something. You know, what's the next thing to do? And what's the next thing to do to get to a place where it can be finished doing? So if you let that, and so the thing is that when you stop the thoughts, then that place of stillness is always here. And what's creating the disconnect is these thoughts which want to do something, you see. So that for me was then the thing then, you know, I want to let go of my thoughts and make them more meaningless. That for me is the great thing, and that then dismantled the thing of chasing objects in the external world to get a payoff. Because there must be two ways to be in the world. One is chasing things to get a better feeling after you've got them, or to let go of all chasing things so that you are connected to the stillness and just being in the world, spontaneously being in the world, whatever one is being. So that would then be the automatic opposite of chasing things, but being in stillness in every moment and just being in the world. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, I just made myself a nice cup of tea.
Yeah.
Now, that was a desire. I'm glad I did it.
Yes.
Have I sinned by doing that?
Oh, it's not a case of case of sin.
No.
It's not a case of sin. And
but it's
no.
a desire.
Okay. Yeah. So if if everything is relative, everything is relative. And strong desires, when you get to the level of addiction, create great levels of unmanageability and unspiritual behavior. As you get to, I mean, even at the levels of the 500s, you still have a desire for a cup of tea, because you haven't yet got to enlightenment yet. But the ones who, if you pursue enlightenment, the ones who are enlightened, like Muji and Hawkins, both say they don't need or want anything. There's nothing in the world that you can give them that they want or need. So at that state, and even from your own spiritual experiences, I'm sure you've had, when you felt really blissed out and connected and peaceful, if somebody said, if I make you a cup of tea, do you want a cup of tea and will this make you feel better? Actually, in those very, very high states, you wouldn't need one.
No. But even the spiritual teachers like Hawkins, that they pretty much had to eat
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's a very good point because you know, that's why I guess God's in charge of the whole universe. He had a wife to make sure to remind him to eat, because he was literally getting thin because he'd forget to eat.
God was.
Dr. Hawkins.
The wife.
Yeah, Dr. Hawkins. So it's a good point. Yeah, they do sometimes forget to eat because the intensity of the energy and the presence is so enormous that any desire, I mean, to feel, because desire is like lack, basically. It's suddenly like you're not feeling there's something out in this moment. So it's partly a program, and that so you've got to go and get the coffee. But it's not. But there's levels of consciousness. Even at in the 500s, even most saints would probably want a cup of tea at some point. It's very vague though, because if you're at sainthood, i.e. feeling loving towards everyone most of the time, you're in a pretty high state. So wanting a cup of tea is going to be like a small thing. It's not going to be like,
I'm still a bit confused about it because you know, reading the I Am That book,
I am that.
he seems to be constantly saying to let go of all desires.
Oh, that's enlightenment. Yes, that's correct.
That it's very difficult.
Oh,
But you can have a preference for a cup of tea.
yes.
The fact that you actually have it or not, it wouldn't make any difference, but you can have a preference.
That's the better way to describe it. So it's like, I mean, I think I am that is someone trying to get you into enlightenment straight away.
Right.
So the teachings are like, you're reading this book because you want to be enlightened, so let go of all desires, don't waste your time. However, with Hawkins' map of consciousness, we can see that we can make improvements in our levels of consciousness, which mean that now, like when I was in food addiction, like I wouldn't just get a small preference for a biscuit. It would be like an overwhelming urge, and I have to like let everything go.
Yes.
So that's a very, very low level of consciousness. When you get to more advanced levels of consciousness, it's more like what Dimitri was saying, which is more like, oh, it'd be quite nice to have one, but it's not a big deal, you see, and you just have it. So that means you're already at a very high field, because when you're at the levels of love, when you want to do things, the urges are very, very small and are not that important. You know, whether I walk in the park or stay and spend the day indoors, it's not really, oh, I might have a slight inclination to go and sit out on a walk. It's not like, it's very, very minor. I don't think it was like, you know, you're going to die if you didn't have a cup of tea in that minute.
Isn't the intensity of the desire as well? It's all relative. Like you're not going to die if you have a cup of tea, go without it. But for me, when I get anxiety, high anxiety related to the depression, it's like the world's come to an end if this doesn't happen. Or this planning application is a complete obsession. It's like, you know, it really is. I'm going to have to move house. You know, it's so bad. That's the sort. It's the intensity of it. Is it's all relative.
As a food addict, I could have stolen Dimitri's biscuits when she wasn't looking.
But any.
You stopped buying biscuits and said we'd come here for some reason. So that's right.
You know, I've got myself ill from this obsession, this planning application, this desire. I've got ill from that. It's pushed me over.
Yeah, it does come across as a bit obsessive.
What I'm saying is, compared to a cup of tea, it's not.
Yes.
Well, one thing I've learned is definitely that obviously you have like different like desires, more ones with like more urges. But at the end of the day, I think it's just all about letting everything go and not to worry, because I think a lot of the time, especially when you have those significant urges, it's like, because you're worried what's going to happen, like, you know, with yourself, or maybe you might die, or like you just can't live without it. But one thing I've learned from my own experience is that the universe, if you trust in God or the higher being or whatever you want to call it, the universe will take care of you. It really, really will. There's nothing to worry about. 100%. I'm just saying this from my own experience. Like,
what a wonderful thing to say. It's your time of life.
It's also what Hawkins says in his research.
Yeah.
It's also what I think all spiritual traditions say that as well. That if you let go and surrender, that you'll be taken care of by the universe. By
yeah, I'm kind of finding that just lately.
Yeah.
That, just don't worry, be happy, you know.
But yes, it's also like in addiction fellowships, as you let go of your will, I want you to control things and surrender, then life gets better. You know, for me, it's like everyone's had the days when every bus arrives on time, every tube arrives on time, and everything goes well, everyone's nice to you. And that's for me when you've got a super connection. And when you're disconnected, everything goes wrong in the day. And so those are like, the more you let go of the ego, the more you get into the fields of the continuous miraculous, where miracles happen every day, and then becomes normal experience. On a certain level, I'm a walking expression of that I've not been in food addiction for many years. All my major physical ailments have vanished. What is supporting me is that the absence of ego means that field of connection is taken care of. Probably if I was to get really disconnected for long enough, I'd go straight back to where I was before. So, yeah, so that was that. Any other questions at this point? No? Okay. So yeah, so that was the thing with Ramana's thing of, that took out the thing of making anything, I don't want to make anything important in the world, because that's going to like block off the presence and the stillness, the capacity for unity and oneness, or as you were saying, the holy relationship. So I don't want any aspect of my ego to be holding on with interest to anything. Now, with one of the ways that, even though it's not a good way, is to see what am I and what am I not. In this moment, what am I and what am I not. And I just like to give the metaphor of the eye. You know, if there's an eyeball and the eyeball sees a mug of tea on the table, so what am I? Am I the mug of tea, or am I the eyeball? Well, I can't be the object out there, because that's the object out there. So I must be the thing that's observing. That's observing the mug on the table. So in the self-inquiry technique, what am I? Well, we want to find out what am I, which is not an object out there. You see, so it's a field of discovery. So let's just say that, as a metaphor, even though it's not accurate, so I'm the eyeball, and so I cannot be the mug of water on the table, I cannot be the lamp out there. But the eyeball sees the leg, so I cannot be the leg. The eyeball sees the hand, so I cannot be the hand. But then what about, so anything that is observed externally, there is that which is the observer of all things which are external. So let me try and experience that which is observing all things that are perceived out there. It's got to be a mistake if I'm identifying with an object out there and calling it myself. Now, then we take it to the next level. So if there's any phenomenon that can pass, then there must be that which can observe the phenomenon that passes. So what are the things that can be observed passing? Well, not only can I observe the mug out there, so the mug cannot be the observer. And also, but what about thoughts? Well, thoughts are observed coming and going. So what is here that observes all thoughts coming and going? Because those are things that pass. But what else passes? Well, also time passes. There's something actually that observes even the tracking of time passing. But what about images? Well, images are observed passing. So there's something that observes images. What about memories? Something observes memories passing. What about senses? what about the five senses? Something observes tastes passing, sights, sounds, touch passing. So there's something here which observes everything that is passing, but is not the things which are passing. So what's here right now, in this instant, which is not something which passes, which is present right now? Some other metaphors that I like to use, is as a metaphor, it would be like, it's like there's clouds in the sky, and one is fixated on the clouds. And if you were to ask the person, what can you see? They'd say, well, there's just clouds. But one day in contemplation, suddenly there's a recognition. No, there is the sky here, or there's the space. Once that is recognized in the present moment, then one recognizes this is always here and present. Those are just objects which are passing. So you could say, on a certain level, enlightenment is just the recognition of what is here right now. It's not an intellectual construct, but what is it that is recognized here right now? It's the thing which is not a thing, which doesn't make sense. And in using words, it's like the eternal stillness and silence, the unlimited eternal stillness and silence that is always here, and it's always here, even though I'm talking, the eternal silence is here, even though there's noises outside, even though there's people here. Or another metaphor that one of my spiritual teachers said, it's like goldfish in a goldfish bowl. And you're seeing the goldfish in the goldfish bowl, and the goldfish are like the thoughts. And if someone was to ask, what are you? You'd be like, well, I'm my thoughts, which are the goldfish. Then one day one realizes one was never the thoughts, one was the water. And that is the recognition of what is here. So the other thing to recognize is all thoughts are equally meaningless, and the next thing is a thought. So that means it's a recognition, is the best way to say it. There's a recognition of something that is here, which is eternally still, eternally silent, and will always be here for all eternity. Everything else will pass, thoughts, feelings, images, but this will always be here. So once one has connected with that, so with that, is there anyone here that would, so that's the practice I do. If I ever get problems in life, let's say I suddenly have a problem, I think my neighbor is horrible, and there seems to be identification, I just ask myself a question, well, who is having a problem with the neighbor? And I find out. Once I find out who has the problem, well, if I ask the question enough times, then there won't be a problem.